it goes to this whole like B2B doesn't have to be boring. And that's almost been said so many times now that it's sort of a cliche, but it's
Right.
true. And
Yeah.
until we see it across the board, like we can keep saying it. And the temptation,
Yep.
though I know that and I would say that and I would preach that, I still feel the temptation sometimes of like, it would be that much easier to just, we're selling to this type of people. Let's sound just like them. It's just tempting.
Yeah.
The Blowing Up Brands podcast is a running conversation covering brand strategy, demand gen, DEI, unconventional ideas, and unforgettable stories with a whole range of experts, influencers, and other interesting and entertaining characters. Enjoy.
Hey, Graham, how's it going, bud?
Good. How are you doing?
Good enough. Good enough. TGIF, right? Friday. So
Exactly. Yeah. Pretty hard to beat that vibe.
yeah, yeah. No, it's Friday. My Fridays are short, so I have to do the extreme hard labor work of doing a podcast conversation, right? And then and then do some paperwork and wrap up. So
Well, hopefully it won't be pulling teeth
no, no, no. I don't. I mean, it'll be brutal.
for one of us.
I'm gonna make this brutal. Now, I think it'll be good. First off, for our viewers and listeners who might not be familiar with you, why don't you hit us with the intro? Give us your elevator pitch or whatever.
Sure. So Graham Vosburg worked at a company called Techmate, recent hire there. So my second startup, last 4-ish years, I was working at a 43 North company, Kick Further. So they were a finalist in, I want to say 2018 or 19. Moved
Mm.
here from Boulder, Colorado. I was one of their first hires here. Before that, I just worked at an agency. I didn't have any startup experience, didn't really know much about it. I mean, my knowledge at that point of startups was like, I've heard of Facebook. I know Uber is a thing. I know that there are new companies that get created, but I didn't know anything about, the infrastructure. Didn't come from like an entrepreneurial or even honestly like a business education background.
Mm.
But really fell in love super quickly with the fact that, especially as like a young professional, at that point, I was like really moving out of like a really siloed role at an agency where it's you just do this one thing and we can like kind of replace you with the next cog if we need to, which I don't say as like a negative thing about that employer, but more about like they just had it down, right? And you kind of came
Yeah.
in and did the thing and built the skill set. And moving into a startup was, the pitch to me when I was like kind of going back and forth on whether to join, because I admittedly was a little scared about like it is a new company. It's small. I've never heard of them. What does this even mean, or what is it going to be looking like? And the pitch to me was like, you'll working at a startup, you'll learn more than you'll learn anywhere else. No one's ever left a startup and been worse in their career. And like looking backward now, that was like totally spot on. I got exposed to you're just exposed to everything that much faster. And
Mhm.
generally because you're looking at benchmarks and like goals on a relatively, whether it's quarterly, annually, like you go through all the growing pains, you go through like the vision casting that like larger companies have already gone through. And there's pros and cons to both, but learning how to financially model this, learning how to like prepare something so it can be presented to a board. At that point, just probably in my early 30s. And like that's something I probably wouldn't if I'd gone to work at like a large, national regional bank or something like that. You're just going to be asked again to do that one thing. And so I've always really liked small teams. I started, when I was in grad school as an intern at Fisher Price and had an awesome boss, a really small department, but still by the time, and I got exposed to, or was allowed to get involved with a lot of stuff. But by the time it goes through this department, that department, legal, parent company or whatever, like it's really hard to find your fingerprint on that thing you made.
Mhm.
And so, in my first job out of college, I was looking at a really small private school where everybody was in it because they liked that mission and that thing. And so small
Mhm.
teams have always sort of been my jam. So joined my second startup just about 2 months ago, and just again really love the ethos. Just love being cliche alert, like rolling up the sleeves. Everyone wears multiple hats, all of
Yeah.
that. So, but yeah, happy to be here. Always love all your content. Love talking marketing, and so just excited to see where we're going to go today.
Yeah, me too. I have no idea really. So it should be see we'll see where we end up. but yeah, that journey you're talking about, right? So from the places that, yeah, I speak more disparagingly sometimes, not intentionally insulting, but like the mills, right? The factory approach to marketing where you're getting plugged in, you're doing one particular thing. And we have we have ones here that are more localized. I have a few places in mind. Main Street, something or other, where where the people churn, and then a new digital agency starts every week from someone who leaves. And then there's the national versions that that you came from, right, with the local chapters, and they've got the model. It's
Mhm.
the Ford approach, right, to churning that stuff out, very specialized. And then you're talking about kind of going into an environment where it's like, all right, you're going to have your hands on everything. You have to like learn a bunch of new things. And not just the financial kind of operational stuff, right? But different sides of marketing. Like you can't be an expert in everything, obviously. Or maybe not so obvious, given some of the job descriptions I've seen floating out there, what people are hiring for. Clearly, they don't understand you
Yep.
can't be an expert in everything.
Mhm.
Like
Yep.
you have to lie to get this job, and then someone's going to get found out. But what do you think? So, as head of growth now, right, and director of growth and stuff was at the last position. What do you think was the hardest thing, like coming out of a very specialized role, going into a wider role? What was the thing that you think was like maybe either hardest, and if it's different, like most important to add on, right? What was the marketing skill set? Like maybe it's the channel, maybe it's a specific tactic, like, but what for growth of a small company, what was the most important thing for you to learn quick and get good at?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the challenge for me, especially just like the way my brain works, like I guess like it's sort of analogous to like when you work at a company that's established, it's sort of like moving into a house that's already built, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you have like little things you got to maintain, but then like when you start from scratch or like taking on a big project like a startup where like, oh, we haven't built out that, or we don't have the first version of nurture sequences, or we haven't really looked at our homepage in about 6 years. It's your essential, you call whether the blank slate or carry the home analogy over. It's like a plot of land. Like what do you build on that? And so it's super easy you can lose the forest for the trees. And some just to go straight analogy on analogy, like it's just you can really just like it's I'll say for me, like I can be really detail oriented, which is a strength, but
Yeah.
it can also be a weakness. If you need to like I'm the poster boy for like good is the opposite of great, or whatever the exact saying is. Like, because I
Mm-hmm.
will, like, historically, before kind of learning that lesson or having it pointed out to me that I'm doing that, like, I would sit and like toy and toy and toy and like, I'd have the 80% or 90% good version ready to go. But I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't be able to identify that and say, like, the next 4 weeks I'm going to spend on this thing is going to return 2% improvement. Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
such a, it's such an easy career thing, the early career thing and in life thing to run into. And so, when I look back, especially like in my last role where I was really kind of handed the keys.
Mm-hmm.
One is it's like I think all of us would say like, we want to have control. If you have like a certain set of confidence in your abilities, like you want to be behind the wheel, you want to be the one driving. But then
Yep.
when you realize that like you're in charge of the whole road trip, to carry that again
Mm-hmm.
analogy, like it's it can be overwhelming. And so like when I look back now, it's like, well, again, what value did that bring? Was that the most important thing? Like it's a trope that like you come in as a marketer and the first thing you do is like change the website, because it's like you want to make this splash and you want to have this shiny thing that you can point to and like
Yeah.
brag about.
And
And
quick
websites,
wins, and yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
websites are hyper important. There's no doubt about it. Like it's there's just no doubt about it. But it's also like almost a vanity thing. Like you might your website might be ugly, but it could probably go even further. Like, a lot of hero sections are just like, so think about like the headlines you usually read. It's like, it's very like, this is what we do. We are
Mm-hmm.
cloud, yada, yada, yada. And it's like, well, but what do you solve? And like the thing that the most excited I think I got in my last, there were plenty of things I liked, but like I rewrote a landing page at one point. There's all of these templates that you can follow, like best practice landing page, punchy headline, couple of bullet points, form. and keep it above the fold. And we did that, and we certainly had improvement. But then like one night I think I was sitting like right here, and I was like, what, I was probably watching something, and I really love good copywriting. Like it's just like, I when I'm not doing it, I certainly get rusty. But I think it's at one point I would have considered myself like a relatively good copywriter. And going back and rewriting it and just like in a human voice, like, all right, we've spent tens of thousands of dollars on this already. Is there a real risk if I spend $3,000 on this version that sounds different? And I remember just being, and it was long form, right? It goes beyond the fold.
Yeah.
It was all white background, no call to action, no call to action above the fold, no form.
Mhm.
And I remember launching it, and I think I did I give it 50-50 split? I can't remember. But then I'm like, obsessively, refreshing that night. Like, do we get anything? And I'm like, no, okay. And I go to bed thinking, well, at least it's a good trial. And of course, like I just said, I did it at night and I went to bed. So like, what's going to happen in a couple hours anyway? But
Yeah.
so I woke up the next morning, and like we were converting, let's say at like 6%, and it was at 10 or 12 or something. It came back down to earth over time. But I was like, okay, like there's obviously an appetite for what this is. People are resonating with it.
Yeah.
The numbers show that, right? So
Yeah.
it goes to this whole like B2B doesn't have to be boring. And that's almost been said so many times now that it's sort of a cliche, but
Right.
it's true. And until we see it across the board, like we can keep saying it. And the temptation, though I know that, and I would say that, and I would preach that, I still feel the temptation sometimes of like, it would be that much easier to just, we're selling to this type of people. Let's sound just like them. It's just tempting.
Yeah, no, it's extremely tempting, and yeah, people have been taking the opposite position for a while, right? It's boring out here. Be different, think different from Apple, to quote The Office. And if you look at LinkedIn, right, then you still are going to see, for the most part, the same thing, right? We had a conversation a few weeks ago, as at the agency, as we're kind of, we've been preparing. We just rolled out our new website. Speaking of websites that are written on the human side and almost not quite eschewing all best practices and fucking SEO things, but largely, the SEO person on our team battles with me perpetually to make sure that there are still something worthwhile for Google's current rendition to like look for, but like it's not structured that way, it's not written that way, we didn't use the dumber words. Well, do people know what executions and applications are? I mean, like if someone's searching, they're searching for marketing. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. I'm not looking for the like 20-year-old who's like searching marketing for the first time in his life, right? I'm looking for someone's going to come here for some other reason. They're going to come from social. They're going to know what we do. And this is what it talks about. Like, listen, we do brand strategy, we do creative, and then we do the executions of that stuff. Like that's actually what we do in our fucking terms. And so I'm going to write it that way in our voice. And it's going to get long in some parts because I can get long fucking winded at times, right? But that's the fucking brand. And like, we're going to write it out that way. And yeah, we talked about earlier, right? That's a different thing than this city and area is used to. Even agencies who do great work are indistinguishable almost website wise, unless it's because it's really old and bad looking. That's what's standing out, but also in B2B land, which a lot of our clients are. And so, obviously we are B2B given what we do, and a lot of our clients are. And you go scrolling through LinkedIn, I don't notice that I'm seeing ads on LinkedIn, frankly, anymore, because I go past them so quickly. They literally look like the rest of the background. I'm always in dark mode. And so everything just looks the same as it goes by. And we had to learn that for ourselves. And I have to remind our team of that pretty frequently as well, right? Because these are designers who are then trained in a certain style. So we produce branded ads, right? We produce great. It looks fucking great from design standpoint. Like this is so on brand with the brand guidelines we did for this. And watch it go by in a feed, like stop you. It doesn't. I think it was a few weeks ago, like Dave Gerhardt had a fucking LinkedIn post where it was a screenshot, like he'd taken a picture of a piece of paper where he had drawn a turd on it, like a piece of dog shit. And like you see it and you're like, oh, what is this? Like, now I'm going to read the headline and now I'm going to go in, right? Like there's something to the fundamentals of writing and messaging and I'm also biased because this is my thing, right? Like, here's what I do here. I do strategy and high level messaging and copy. But like that shit comes first. And best practices might be applicable and they might not, right? And like you talked about the testing, obviously do them both, right? What do you think in your gut if you're talking to a human? Like, how is someone going to respond to this? Yeah, now do a ClickFunnels landing page for the other one, right? Like, do a fucking keep it above the fold bullets, as little work as possible, as if we're selling like 87-cent widgets, right? Or $97 info courses. Like just like eliminate friction. Like, no, man, like give some friction, tell a fucking story, make somebody scroll for once and like read something and then see how that performs, because that doesn't happen in B2B still, despite the years of, Brooklyn and, whatever, Chris Walker, all these kind of fucking people on LinkedIn saying like, oh, it doesn't have to be boring, have something to say, make it perspective, piss some people off, even Rand. After doing the episode, then I just saw him yesterday doing some other interview or someone who's like, yeah, no, you should be pissing someone off, right? Like you should, like if your content isn't getting disagreement from someone, like you're probably not fucking saying anything.
Mhm.
But it's hard. You've got large corporate teams, your Fisher Price scenario, right? Like the 18 people it has to get through the approval by committee. That sucks for design. It sucks for all marketing. It sucks for writing. Or small teams of people who are like, we only have so much. We only have so much budget. We only have so much resources. Like, let's spend it on shit that we know. And I've heard the word SEO. I know a website should be whatever, mobile responsive, right? Like I'm a business owner and I've caught up to 10 years ago, like a marketing terminology. So let's do, some PDFs. Let's do some bullshit. Let's do these things that I've heard convert on the back of an event. And it looks like everything else. It's got no fucking value. Nobody wants your fucking newsletter. I probably shouldn't say this because it is a local enough group, but like I got a newsletter the other day. I Slack this shit to my team. I just rip shit up all day long, right? They're like, you could just do this on LinkedIn. I'm like, this is too harsh. I don't want to always be negative on LinkedIn, but like I got a fucking newsletter. The subject line is valuable insights delivered straight to your inbox.
Yes.
Which is, the boring. And listen, I've put this pitch on newsletters, right? Sometimes there's nothing else to say. Like the whole value prop here is that like, cool, you don't have to come find our stuff as if you're going to go looking for it. We're going to like send it right to you. But like, that's literally is the most cliched way. It's a joke internally to put it. They've put it as the subject line. And I don't know if this was an error or like the plan. And this is an agency. They fucking repeated it. That was the subject line of last month's newsletter. So they've got the most cliched line as their fucking subject line in the email. And then it's like totally unrelated, because then you can read kind of like the preview. They didn't scrub that right. And so the preview reads like with their own internal notes and then goes into a pitch. Here's how to know when you fucking should get a new website. I'm like, cool. So you went with the really bland pitch as your subject line that's about valuable insights. And your first article in your newsletter is a non-transparent, like, here's why probably, hey, only get a website if you're one of these 10 things that like literally everybody is, and like that is B2B in a fucking nutshell. And again, like it's a local group. I know and like the person who fucking runs that fucking agency. And like, this is fucking terrible. Like, are you kidding me?
Well, it's really easy. So like I'll use the word like thoughtless, but it's not intended in like the mean way. But like there's so much that you do, right? Everybody's got a zillion things on their to-do list, professionally, personally, whatever it may. And so you fall into like, I see someone else do that, and so your brain, sort of thankfully by evolution, it's just like that must be the way it's done, right? Like the other day, I was talking to my mom, and I can't remember how we got necessarily there, but I was like, she's like, you ever notice your dad does like this with his posture? And I'm like, I do that with my posture. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that until recently. And I made fun of him my whole life. Like maybe not to his face, but like he would always kind of do this thing where he like hunched his neck forward if he's listening. And I saw a picture of myself and I'm doing the same thing. I wasn't looking at the ground. It wasn't someone who's shorter than me. I just did it because at some point I watched as a young kid and I saw that's what it looks like when you engage with someone. And so
Yeah.
I didn't think about it. I just did it. And so when somebody says like, hey, we need a newsletter put out, it's just super easy to be like, I get all these other ones. Like the purpose is like checkbox. We wanted to, and we did it, and it's done, right?
Yeah.
But like, what real value does it provide? And realistically, it's like, it's super easy, especially from like an agency perspective, when you have to, everybody, it's like politicians. Everybody starts with great intentions, right? I'm going to be the one who doesn't kowtow to that. I'm going to be the one who speaks up, and then none of them do it. And you know why? It's because it's once you start playing the game, it's almost impossible. You have to have a super strong spine, and it gets really hard to withstand the storm sometimes. Agency is no different, right? Okay, we started with one client, now we've got 13, and it's like, well, I have to keep juggling them, and I have to keep getting that money in, and it's just like, the easiest thing to do is produce it A, B, C, right? And so the thing that like, I don't know if it turns me on, but like when I talk to an agency and they're like, well, we only take clients that are this or this, I'm like, I can't show them this, but I'm way more interested now because the fact that you might tell me no, it tells me that you have like standards. Even if it's like a sales tactic, it at least tells me you have standards.
Right. Yeah, you're willing to screen or present the appearance of screening out. And I think that's and it's obviously true of like once you get into a business, right? Like once you've hired people, you're playing the game of now I have to keep enough revenue to keep these people and not cut people loose, which means you start compromising, and it happens. Certainly fucking happens to us, right? Like it's not like every client's an ideal client. It's not like every scenario is ideal. We're like, we don't want to just be the pair of hands creative agency. Like we want to be partners. Like spoiler alert, like we do some fucking pair of hands work, right? Sometimes some and long-term partners, like, they just use us for like, hey, like, can you help produce this, right? Can you put this out? Like we do that stuff. We do have certain lines that we don't cross with people as far as like their behavior, where they're going. In some cases, I won't quite call it political, right? But there are certain things that are blatant enough when I've been in your office where it's just like, this is not a blend, right? Like we empower. Like, I mean, the whole marketing thing, right, is like we're working together to help you grow. And the way power is tabulated in this culture is money. And so like you making more money because of us is you having more power in the world. And there are certain fucking groups of people that I do not want having more power in the world. So we draw lines around certain ethics, certain behaviors. People are being assholes to their own team or certainly with ours. Like there are certain things. And now some of those are written in the website. More of them will come in blog posts and on my LinkedIn. But like, like there are guidelines for us. Like we're not going to, here's the specific kind of thing that we work best with, right? You're looking to change something. You're on some precipice. You're willing to have a fucking conversation about doing something in a different way that isn't necessarily the same way you've always done it, but also not just doing shit just to be different. Because that's the other thing, right? Just like, hey, I'm unique for its own sake, or I'm me too. Everything else is like the two blends of B2B. One you don't see a lot of because it disappears quickly. LinkedIn ecosystem doesn't tolerate that one thing for very long. Either you start doing the same post as everybody else or you're fucking gone, right? But like, there are pressures. There are pressures to maintain something. But then, there is also, right, you just stop putting the fucking effort in. And the scenario I was talking about, like, that's like, I'm sorry, at least 3 people over there saw this. And maybe I'm strategically fucking moronic at this moment. I don't think here we are talking about it. There's the old cliche to justify bad marketing. Well, we're talking about it, right? I'm like, yeah, no, we're marketers talking about bad marketing. This is not the conversation. Some press is bad press, and you getting shit talked, despite Rand's statement, is not great. And if your tactic is to repeat your subject line every time and have it be the most boring pitch for a fucking thing built right in, and then to segue with a bait and switch from a value prop into a fucking like, here's why you should buy something from us, like that's bad. And it's out of character for who I'm talking about. And so like sometimes we've taken we've taken the wrong track with things, like something's gone off. And I think businesses, that's often the case, especially B2B, right? There's a lot of sections of B2B that like, A, you don't need to exist at all. And just like our industry, people don't trust you and for a lot of good reason, like you've been lying, the myriad levels of the financial services industries, like y'all don't need to fucking exist for anything. I'm sorry, like value add stopped being a thing except for like some of y'all's pockets for a long time, and there's no good way of spinning it, right? If you've got an ecosystem and like you're doing fucking collections on one side and fucking payday loans, or like whatever, like you've got some weird, like this feels fucking odd and it doesn't need to exist, and your marketing is bad, like, and we're not going to be the ones to help make it good, like after a while. So you've got to like, you do have to have standards, you do have to have lines. A lot of times that is a pitch, right? A lot of times it is like, well, listen, these are the only brands we work with, except for anytime anyone else says yes.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Because I have kids and they're expensive. But yeah, so I think with strategy and copywriting and trying out like actual human shit, because let's throw out more cliches, right? Whether it's B2C or B2B, it's still H to H. It's still human,
Right.
which is true. Old and cliche, but true. And so, are there any particular things that you did, whether at the last company? I mean, you're pretty fucking brand new at the current one, right? So I'm sure you've been just buried, just trying to get yourself kind of like up to speed, and like you start to think of a plan. But besides like the landing page example, is there anything that might be useful for someone watching or listening that you did that was maybe counterintuitive, maybe was against best practice, but that then saw growth? Because you're at a small firm, and while it is, like tech, right, and tech adjacent, like it's like the stuff I'm aware of that you've done isn't necessarily like, well, this only works because you're in a tech space, right? And so, what have you encountered or learned or done that was counter to what's maybe a platform or best practice would have said, that gave you some good results in getting a small business to grow?
Yeah, that's I think really transparently, a lot of like, I think a lot of like, especially my last company, I think a lot of what we did that turned into growth was we tried and we failed a lot. And I think like some of our successes was due almost like in spite of ourselves sometimes, to like, it was really great product market fit, which is like, we could probably talk about that for 8 hours on its own.
Yeah.
And so, I don't think I'm being like overly hard on. I'm trying to think of like something, and I think, obviously, because it's not like great content to sit and watch me think for like 5 minutes.
No, yeah, we'll just pause. I'll have the team add some music in this part, like the Jeopardy theme.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that, as I was thinking, peek behind the curtain, we talk a little bit beforehand about, what do we want to talk about today, and so. As I was thinking about, what if you're listening, it's like practical application. Like one thing that came into my mind is like, so I'm like a newish homeowner, and I've gone full old man mode. Like when I see beautiful grass, I stop and touch it on walks, and like all the stupid stuff that you made, again, make fun of your dad for, whoever growing up, like I just became it, right? Like I'm about this close from getting the New Balance to just round it all out, and.
So like, the Skechers round one.
Yes. Oh gosh. Hey, go fit, man. But like so sometimes, so I was looking up like yard services, and I know a lot of these small businesses turn to local agencies, and this isn't just to like totally crap on local agencies. If that is not my prerogative, it is probably much harder. There are so many things about running it and managing it and delivering results that I have no clue about, that I think are fair to point out. But like the headline is usually lawn care service, Buffalo, New York. And that obviously accomplishes something. Like, but like, what if I were to just like, it doesn't tell, I'm like, okay, I know who this is probably produced by. I can kind of see, because it looks like the format that they use for their builder. If I were to pull up that site and it said like, have a great effing lawn or something like that, I would immediately be on board, because I'm like, even if the rest of the site is like less than polished, I'm like, I buy into that. That's
Yeah.
cool. Like you told me almost everything about who you are as a brand, like in a handful of words on the top of the screen on my mobile device, which is, what is that, 4 inches by like 2.5 or something. I know a ton about you already. Don't be
Mhm.
afraid. Like, the last couple of years, like locally, there's like, Macy's Place Pizzeria, which has gone nuts on social because they've just done their thing and they're not afraid of like how they're going to brand themselves.
Yeah.
And you might say, like, well, it's a younger following they have. I don't know if that's true or not true. For someone, I'm sure that they're just a local pizzeria, but they're unapologetic about who they are. We can all point to brands. It might narrow down who they're going to serve, but the whole, like, you can even, if you want to make everything about marketing, like everyone on LinkedIn does, like, you can even call that demand creation. Demand creation is like, who are you? What do you stand for?
Mhm.
Like, you can do that if you're lawn care. You can do that if you're B2B SaaS. Like,
Yeah.
yes, it absolutely. You and I have talked about this, and you're open about it. Like, I am not for everyone. I
Mhm.
am who I am, and I'm going to strip things down so that you shouldn't be shocked when you get on a call with me. I am who I
Yeah.
am, right? So pre-select people out. That's fine.
Mhm.
Like, if you still provide a good service or have a good product, if some people are going to be opposed because I want to have the biggest approach as possible. And
Yeah.
there's obviously that you're in business to make money. That makes sense. But like, go for it, man. Like, have soul.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that also, and I think lawn care is a great example because like the high competition, right? The commoditized things in
Yes.
particular. Like if you're doing something that's very unique from the get-go, like if you've done literal category creation, not just the marketing trick, right? Not we're calling chatbots conversational marketing now. Which is also a clever technique. But if you're a fucking pizza place, you're a fucking, you're doing lawn care, you and a billion other companies in like a 5 block radius, right? You are, and we talked a little about this, right? You're a local agency, frankly, right? Like
Yep.
there's no lack of competition. And so if you're hitting the main benefit points, like hopefully you have one differentiator functionally, right? Hopefully you do have some feature or benefit that other people are not providing, and it's not just your personality. But that is where the brand shit matters most functionally in advantage wise, right? Like I don't need to know if you're doing something that literally no one else is doing and like that's a perfect fit for me. Like I don't give a shit what tone you're talking in. Like probably going to get that, right? If I've got 1,800 options every time I search something or every time I ask for a recommendation in a fucking Facebook group, then there is a question, like we've been working on here's another one, personal injury lawyers, right? We've brought on a client, a large client in that space recently, kind of client that people don't think that I should be able to land by walking into really fancy places looking like this. But that speaks to it as well, right? Like I walk into those places looking just like fucking like this. We're like, oh, you must have more courage than anyone else in the fucking city. But like that space is loaded, right? It's a snappy phone number. It's an easy because it's like, oh, you're in a fucked up situation. What's my first recall? Right. Our pitch was like, yeah, no, that's helpful. And let's just say you're in a space where two firms both have single digit phone numbers, right? Where you've got a
Everybody does
4 and
now.
an 8. Like, so then the question is, even in a snap decision in a stressful moments, if I remember both, what is the one thing that like tilts me towards one or the other, right? There's that is where some kind of emotional connection, some kind of brand resonance comes in, right? If I think, oh, this one had a quirky ad or this one, like I feel safer with, like whatever the fuck, if you've got a resonance with it, that tips the scale in an otherwise equal field. So lawn care, yeah, someone who's like, oh, here's this, and A1 lawn care services, and like their logo is like the house shape that's got the fucking name inside of it, like every roofing company that's ever existed.
Yep.
Like, cool, there's that. And then there's like, have a great fucking lawn, right? Are you looking for an agency that does strategy and branded content creation and blah, 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 blah? Good fucking luck, because there's a few of them, even right here.
Mhm.
One of the other guys like lives literally down the street from me. So like, you could bring it into my apartment and then send you down the street to Pat's house, and you can be like, hey, which vibe do you like better? Because
Yep.
that's what it actually comes down to. like what even we're specializing in as particular kinds of agencies are the fucking same. But now, right, we've decided to like, all right, well, let's lean way in with our own fucking ethos and put on a website. Then yeah, if you don't like someone swearing, go to Block Club. If 19 Ideas is kind of iffy, like they're fun enough over there where somebody might drop an F-bomb, like they've got a cool fucking vibe over there. But like, and if you need a fucking PR push for sure, like they have real differentiators, right? Like crazy PR background. If you have a PR, like don't come, like go there first, right? But like otherwise, there's a whole bunch of us in a certain space providing very similar things to various kinds of clients, and then it is, well, which people do you want to work with?
Yeah, totally. I mean, you're spot on. Well, again, like what is brand builds longevity, right? And so at this point, we're sort of entered into like the two marketers talking really meta about marketing phase of like marketing conversation. But it is like, you think about, you go out one night and you have a good time, and it's like you meet somebody new, and it's like then you meet them again, it's like, oh, it wasn't as fun as last time. You're like, well, maybe it wasn't that person I had a good time with. It was like that thing. But then there are people who it's like you can just sit and like just hang out with them because it's like that's their brand, that's who they are. Like people at Block Club, like it's been a while since I've connected with them, but I see them around town. Patrick is smart. Patrick is like, their work is great, and they build a good clientele because they're good at it. Like Eric of the Sea has a totally different approach, and by his own admission, he'd tell you that he's like kind of a lot, and he's just different. But I can pick out his stuff on the radio or whatever because it sounds outstanding, and it's not boring, and it's written so well.
Tremendous.
It just out of this world, and that isn't, if I didn't mention another agency, doesn't mean I don't like or whatever. But it's just like it's clear that like those two agencies have like kind of carved their own, they've made their own path, and I think they saw a longer term, whether they saw it strategically and did it, or whether it's just like them and that's who they are. Like good for them. Like, I mean, you might like, there are probably some, whether it's big, small, local, national business that are like, that's not for us. Fine. Like you're going to try to force, if I'm either of them, like I'm not going to work well if you try to force me square, round peg, square hole.
Not at all. Like, and their brands say that, right? Like, so now, like Block Club, like you figured that out as you work with them and as you interact with those folks, like what the strengths are, what the specialties are, what the tone is, what the vibe is, the personal, like all that stuff like plays a factor. Eric of the Sea, and I've been pretty close with Eric for a long time. When I was doing other kinds of consulting, he was a client of mine. So we've been a lot of learning back and forth, and I've learned a shit ton from him, right, about what I specialize in now, basically. And that right from the jump, right? Like you go on their website, you see him, he's got a uniform, right? His little his sweater vibe, skinny bearded guy in the sweater vibe, the all the boat theme on the website. Like you're in for this or you're fucking not. But you hear his stuff. We had clients in common, speaking of roofing companies, and so collaborated on a lot of different projects. And like, you know the ads when you hear them, which sometimes in marketing for us, when we're getting meta, like you don't like, right? Because the conversation is like, I can always look and like, oh, there's a Block Club website, whatever website. But like the customers of those businesses don't fucking know that. They don't have to listen to an Eric Eustace radio ad.
Right.
And who the fuck is better at radio ads in particular around here? Like he does that.
I don't know anybody.
He figures the brand shit out right. And then he has gotten really good in that very particular space. Now he doesn't, they do other shit good too, but they don't actually do shit. That's the only thing they produce, right? They do the consulting model, and then they do that. And the stuff is fucking amazing. I mean, we would get the roofing company we both were doing work with, like they had radio ads that we did a bad tweets video of people at this company reading the fucking shit on Twitter.
I remember that.
About the radio ads, right? And so, like whether or not, and it's brand ads, and so you never know conversion and all that kind of shit. Like, but like, listen, people are out on a different fucking platform talking about these ads and how insane they are. Like that's, assure you it counts for something, right? And then we turned it into something else. So like, Eric, like that vibe is very clear. That was a large inspiration. Like I mean, not personally. Personally, I'm pretty willing to just kind of be myself and like fucking like do whatever I want. But like actually doing that in business, even in this field, is pretty fucking rare. Like I always make the comments that even like with queer folks, like plenty of queers in marketing, right? But they're in the back. they're doing the design. You know, there's a lot of it because that's where all the artists are in business. And then you got the suits out front. You know, 15 is stocked up with fucking non-binary folks and all sorts of shit doing the animation and stuff like that. But then Zach and boys are out front with the suits talking big money. And you know, we have them in the back as well, but also just right out front. And so like personally, I've always been able to do that. But like doing that as a position, like, and here's what you should do too, like not mind. You know, our clients should not try to like do me or be me. Like this is not like, we can't do the creative is one thing, but if you hear people sounding like us out there, it's going to be difficult for them, right? Eric's quirky. I'm, you know, borderline antagonistic. So, you know, like most people should not do like exactly how Renoun's going to be doing it, but they should use a fucking partner to do whatever their version of that is, especially if they're in a competitive space. And when people tell the fucking truth, they're probably in a competitive space. We all want to like, oh no, I don't have competition because how we're doing it is different, says everybody. But then you do the research, the competitive research, and you figure out what they're talking about. Is like, oh no, I'm doing the same shit as a bunch of other people are, but I do it better or I'm special. And like, so the response is like, all right, cool. How? And we better turn that into a voice, and we better turn that into a visual, and we better turn that into a fucking presence. Because otherwise you just sound like you're full of shit. Because you're a financial advisor or you're, you know, whatever it is, you're doing the same shit a billion people are doing. And brand matters when you've got people to differentiate from.
Spot on.
Yeah. All right. So we might have hit this already, but since I feel the need to ask a formatted question at least once every episode, so if we repeat ourselves, so be it. But, you know, this pod is about blowing up brands and, you know, mostly in good ways, but also about blowing up myths, right? A big part of like being able to blow something up is unlearning and getting shit out of the way that might be constraining you. So what would you say is the biggest kind of marketing myth that you're out to blow up or have had to blow up for yourself to move forward?
I would say that's such a good question. I mean, it's like, you know, to that client you talk about, that's a roofing client, like good on that dude for being willing to go with that stuff. Like that's, you know, it's pretty easy to say like, no, like I've seen other roofing ads. Generally it's like lowest prices or like, you know, whatever it is, that's not what they do. They're not the cheapest by any means, but you do get a sense that they're really quality. I sort of, I think and I'm going to round that into like, just because someone else is doing it doesn't mean that you have to. And it could be like, whether it's a tactic, whether it's, you could apply it across a number of things. I'm like, right now, what I'm experiencing in my new job is like the playbook that I kind of used at my prior role in the skill set and what I really thought would sort of be the setting I'd place is not going to work. It just isn't. And that like, on one hand, it sucks because I really would have loved to come in and be like, here are the things that I've kind of gotten close to the 10,000 hours on and I can do. And I feel really strong about like immediately driving stuff.
Yeah.
It's going to take like stepping back in order to step forward in the sense of like, just because I'm good at that or I like that, or I see other people doing that, doesn't mean that that's what's right for us. And so like in this case, it's like, you know, all this digital stuff that I would have loved to do, all the paid search that like, you know, it's just like really easy to form a bedrock upon. It's not the thing here. So like it's also okay to say like that doesn't work for me, whether it's like that doesn't like match who I am, what I want to be. It also could be business wise. Like that's just not the thing that's going to work for us. We see this competitor doing it, but it just may not be for you. And so like I you know, I had a professor in college who was he was just one of those people who you could just kind of like sit and listen to forever. We were in this like really small poetry writing class that I took because I was trying to finish, an English major, or English minor or something like that. I ended up like just loving it, and I took all the classes he had to offer. And he was telling this story one time about like just to, and I've tried to remember all of it over the years, and I never do. But I remember the point was like accept yourself, and like just we could avoid a whole lot of like heartache in personal life, professional life. Just accept yourself.
Yeah.
Like you are who you are, and like your path might be harder than everyone else's. I'm not going to say it isn't, but at least you have the genuineness, and someone is going to attract that, right? Like we would all tell kids like you don't need to be friends with everybody. Like you're clearly changing who you are to please Johnny or whoever. You don't need to. You're going to be way happier, man. Just like focus on you.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
I agree.
I believe that.
I'm in full support of your argument here. Let's bust the fuck out of that myth. All right, cool. Well, I appreciate the time, and it's getting the paperwork time and Friday time. But it's nice to connect as always, and glad we got this set out in a time that works. And you want to let people know how to find you, anything like that? Anything you want to pitch? Yeah, you want to hide? You want to not be perceived?
Nothing. I mean, yeah, nothing. I don't have much to offer, really. But always down to connect on LinkedIn. If anyone wants to talk, like I still love paid search. I wish I got to do it a little bit more often. If you ever just want somebody to look through stuff for free quickly and just talk it over, happy to do that. If you want to meet up at Remedy House and get coffee and talk stuff, happy to do that. I basically have direct deposit going there for how often I'm there anyway. So yeah, I mean, I'm up for whatever. I'm human. I'm not going to try to be a LinkedIn bro. So you're not going to see me posting a ton. Like, not that posting a ton is bad. It isn't. A lot of it sounds the same, and a lot of it is stupid. And I just don't have a ton of talent to that. But happy to always connect with anybody.
Awesome. Well, great to connect as always. Hopefully we'll be shooting the shit soon. Once you get settled in, once you get your head above water in the new place, we'll catch up again.
Always happy to. Always enjoy it.
Awesome. Thanks, Graham.
No, thank you.
Thanks for checking out Blowing Up Brands, brought to you by Renoun Creative. If you dig what we're putting out, follow us on YouTube and your favorite pod platform, and at renowncreative.com. See you soon.